This is Guardian Radio 96.9 FM, Nassau, Bahamas. The views and opinions of the hosts and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the position of the management and staff of Guardian Network. Good afternoon and welcome to the Political Review. Thank you very much for joining us on this wonderful Sunday, the 24th of July, Lord, the year of our Lord 2022. Folks, that means 2022 is more than halfway over. That's intense. Yes, something to think about. So we are living in a country dealing with tragedy. Over the weekend, there have been unfortunate circumstances. Our condolences go out to the families of people who have lost their lives. Police were on the scene of what were presumed to be homicides on multiple occasions over the weekend. This morning, we got the news that a number of people perished attempting to make their way, presumably, to the United States. Our prayers go out for their families and loved ones. And, you know, there's a level of seriousness that sometimes gets, you know, I guess sometimes you have to laugh or else you'll cry, but there's also a time to take things seriously and to be sincere in your reactions and responses to things. And today is one such day. I want to encourage us all to keep those families in our prayers and to be grateful for the blessing that sometimes may escape us. The blessing of being able to live, move, and have our being, as the good book says, here in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, where, as bad as some of us may have it, by and large, we're doing okay. You know, people who leave for other countries do so voluntarily. They do so with full knowledge of the fact that they could just come home if things don't work out wherever they choose to try and plant their new flags. They're not chased out of the country because of political pressure or religious oppression or any other reason. You know, even, and I may take some blows for this, but even the members of the LGBTQI community who are struggling for not just recognition, but to be truly welcomed into the community from a government standpoint. You know, as rough as it is for them, they still have the freedom to live and be without fear for their lives. So, it's a blessing to be a Bahamian, and it's a blessing to be in the Bahamas, to live here, to call this place home. And I just hope that sometimes, especially on a show like this, where with the political to and fro gets pretty vicious, even in that circumstance, we are all our brothers' keepers. We're all our sisters' keepers. And we take each other seriously, to row when we fight, but also to know that when it's time to put the politics down and embrace your brother as your brother, we can do that. Having said that, today is going to be an interesting day in terms of what we're talking about today, because the Summit of the Americas concluded last month in Los Angeles. And at the Summit of the Americas, one of the more important sort of sets of side meetings that happened for us in this part of the world were some meetings between the United States and the Caribbean community, CARICOM. And some promises were made. And I just kind of want to look at some of that for the first part of the show today. The fact is that we have the next heads of the Caribbean community meeting is scheduled for February 2023 here in Nassau. And regional policy hawks are saying that the United States must now make progress on the commitments made during the Summit of the Americas. And those policy hawks are watching to see whether the US's commitments to the region produce tangible results. While assured of the Caribbean's ongoing importance to the US during the summit, CARICOM governments are now focused on whether the US will follow through on those commitments. This is against the background or the backdrop of a number of sort of shared interests between CARICOM and the US, things like migration, things like transnational crime, relations with Venezuela and Cuba, things like, the relationship with China and Taiwan and Chinese and Taiwanese engagement in the region and the hemisphere, other things as well. And so the CARICOM is very, very important to United States' multilateral goals. Not for nothing, CARICOM members vote in major international organizations. And we often find ourselves courted by the United States to vote with them in these multilateral and international organizations. And so it's important that the relationship between us and the US is more than simply words on a piece of paper, more than simply talk by diplomats, but that it produces, as we say, tangible results. Here in the Bahamas, we've had a pretty good history with bilateral relations with the United States, not merely because of tourism, but through things like Operation Bahamas, Turks and Caicos, OPBAT, and the Bahamas has been in one particular set of bilateral agreements referred to as the U.S.'s third border, right? So it's important that we recognize those commitments made during the Summit of the Americas, that we continue to monitor those commitments, and that we see tangible results that move the Caribbean forward, that move the Bahamas forward in a real way, beyond words on a stage with microphones and that in the public arena. I think this was the first time that Joe Biden, the president of the United States, sat with Caribbean leaders. They've sat with Vice President Kamala Harris before, and during the exchange with President Biden, the CARICOM leaders agreed to establish immediately 3 joint committees with the U.S. to address cooperation on finance, cooperation on food security, and cooperation on energy security. So by the time as the meeting in February of next year comes around, those committees ought to have already been did, and work ought to have already been done. And we will be waiting to see what the results of those joint committees are. The Caribbean is used to being talked to and then forgotten because, of course, world affairs seem so far removed from as us countries as undeveloped as we are, relatively speaking. Countries that have a much more pronounced thumb on the global scale. Today, I want to look specifically at an important agreement on climate change that was launched last month, and that I think we need to be particularly aware of as a country, especially given the stance that our prime ministers seem to have taken to try and position the Bahamas as a leading voice for and on behalf of small island developing states in the climate change discussion. So Vice President Kamala Harris last month announced the U.S. Caribbean Partnership to Address the Climate Crisis, or PAC 2030. That PAC 2030 is a Biden-Harris administration initiative involving fresh commitments to and integration of climate adaptation and resilience and clean energy programs across the Caribbean. So PAC 2030 establishes a framework to elevate U.S. cooperation with Caribbean countries to support climate adaptation and strengthen energy security, while building the resilience of critical infrastructure and local economies to the climate crisis. PAC 2030 will serve as the U.S. government's primary mechanism for regional climate adaptation and resilience and energy cooperation through the year 2030 for the Caribbean toward meeting the long-term goals of the Paris Agreement and the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals. So according to Vice President Harris, this comprehensive, adaptive, and goal-oriented approach, unquote, will support the U.S.'s Caribbean neighbors in addressing energy security and climate adaptation and resilience with the urgency these challenges demand. So I'm going to go through the statement that was issued on the launch of PAC 2030, and I'm going to sort of pull out some of the more important commitments that the U.S. is making to the region with the intention of just keeping us abreast of what is supposed to be happening in this particular bilateral relationship. Yes, it's a relationship and CARICOM, but for the Bahamas, and in this moment, I think it is appropriate for us to be focused on what's in this for us. How will this benefit the Bahamas? And I'm working to get one of the, either the political officer or the U.S. Charge d'Affaires to come on the show and discuss this with us. But I wanted to do this today sort of as a background and a preparation for that conversation. So according to Harris, the Caribbean, and I think this is obvious, we all agree on this, is on the front lines of the climate crisis, including sea level rise that threatens low-lying islands and exacerbates storm surge associated with hurricanes. And obviously, we would have seen direct evidence in 2019 with Hurricane Dorian. And the climate crisis is also compounding the challenges facing Caribbean nations as a result of COVID-19 related economic disruptions. And so, according to Kamala Harris, addressing energy security and building climate resilience can unlock new opportunities and safeguard communities. So the PAC 2030 approach, according to the US Vice President, recognizes that all countries in the region are vulnerable to climate change and extreme weather events and require support to address these challenges. So collaboration under PAC 2030 framework will advance two strategic objectives. The first of those strategic objectives is strengthening energy security. The US, under this particular objective, will partner with Caribbean nations and regional institutions to promote stable access to clean and resilient energy infrastructure on a timely, sustainable, and affordable basis. This includes enhancing the resilience of the region's energy systems to both natural and man-made shocks, from hurricanes to oil price spikes. Now, anyone listening to that and having had to go to the gas station over the last few months will recognize how vulnerable we all are to things like oil price spikes, and will appreciate that anything that we can do to strengthen energy security is something that as a nation we have to welcome. And so it is important that strengthening energy security is one of the strategic objectives of PAC 2030, but also this objective is access to clean energy resources and resilient energy infrastructure. We're aware that Bahamas Power and Light has challenges in inculcating renewable energy sources into its generation. There was a plan that was being followed by the last board of directors to try to increase the use of solar resources. That plan obviously with the change in government and the change in the board of directors, was scrapped. And we have yet to see the new plan to address those very important issues. But whatever the new plan is, I think it's going to be important to have this particular framework, the PAC 2030 framework, as a backdrop where we'll be able to partner with these states on clean energy and resilient energy infrastructure, particularly with regard to the affordability of it. And so I think there's going to be great potential for partnership for the Bahamas, at the very least, under that particular strategic objective. The second strategic objective of the PAC 2030 framework is promoting climate adaptation and resilience. The U.S. will collaborate with governments in the region to enhance the Caribbean's adaptive capacity and resilience to climate change, facilitate access to climate-smart services, tools, and technical assistance, and support the design and development of climate-resilient infrastructure. Now, under this strategic objective, there's a lot of potential, there's a lot of work that can be done, but it's also important to note that that the U.S. as a jurisdiction is perhaps, one of the biggest contributors to the very climate change problems that small island developing states like the Bahamas are experiencing. So the assistance and adaptive capacity and the assistance in climate resilience and all of these wonderful things, those are all great. But as Prime Minister Philip Davis would have taken to saying directly to the US, it would be better for them to rein in their own climate activity, which will help us much more than simply helping us access things like climate resilient infrastructure, which we need. I'm not downplaying the importance of it. What I'm saying is that in resilience, we would be much better off if the US would get its own climate game under control. And that would help us a lot more than promoting climate adaptation and resilience. So I just wanted to put that there. Harris said that in order to achieve these two strategic objectives, PAC 2030 will organize its activities and programs under 4 pillars. And those pillars are improving access to development financing, and under this pillar, they're talking about recognizing that access to financing is critical to achieving the region's climate and clean energy objectives. PAC 2030 will work to expand existing access to financing and unlock new financing mechanisms to support climate and clean energy infrastructure development in the region. Key actions under this pillar will include increasing U.S. in International Development Finance Corporation, that's the DFC, financing for climate and clean energy projects in underserved Caribbean countries, as well as collaborating with multilateral development banks and multilateral climate and environmental trust funds to improve the policy environment and unlock access to additional infrastructure financing for the Caribbean. Now, I want to stop here and take a quick note and point out that the use of the term underserved Caribbean countries is for me sort of not necessarily a red flag, let's just call it a pink flag, because in many of these multilateral agencies view the Bahamas with its relatively high GDP per capita is not considered or underserved. So it'll be interesting to see just what access to development financing the Bahamas gets under this particular pillar, just by way of flagging the use of the term underserved Caribbean countries. The next pillar is facilitating clean energy project development and investment. And here we're talking about attracting private investment in clean energy infrastructure and climate adaptation projects in the region. So under this, PAC 2030 will support the development of bankable infrastructure projects. It will promote sound regulatory policies, build project pipelines, and facilitate investment opportunities. So key actions under this pillar will include the establishment of a new PAC 2030 investment facilitation team and a new PAC 2030 technical assistance program that can help mobilize private investment and partner with electric utilities and regulators to integrate more clean energy into Caribbean power and transportation systems. Now, once we've gotten through this, I think there are some, I believe you will hear it yourself, but there are some hints about what else might be going on in this particular, but anyway, let's get through it and then we can talk about those things. The third pillar is enhancing local capacity building. With the goal of enhancing local capacity to access, plan for, predict, mitigate events and related risks in a changing climate, PAC 2030 will increase access to and effective utilization of climate and weather information and decision support tools. Additionally, PAC 2030 will establish clean energy and climate-focused educational exchanges, internships, and trainings to support pathways to careers in climate adaptation and clean energy. Under this pillar, the key actions will include providing access to global climate data and new forecasting tools, as well as expanding the 100,000 Strong in the Americas public-private partnership to the Caribbean. For those of us who live in Hurricane Alley, access to better weather and climate data forecasting tools. So again, I look forward to finding out just what that particular pillar will mean for the Bahamas and for the rest of the Caribbean. And the fourth pillar is deepening collaboration with Caribbean partners. And it says here, leveraging engagements at all levels, from leader level summits to technical working groups to achieve strategic objectives. PAC 2030 will focus on translating high-level climate and clean energy political commitments to policy roadmaps, implementation plans, and concrete outcomes. Key actions under this pillar will include collaboration with the Caribbean Center for Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency and the Caribbean Electric Utility Services Corporation. Participating in Caribbean Sustainable Energy Forum to elevate technical engagement on clean energy and transportation development in the region, and collaborate with Disaster Emergency Management Agency, the Regional Security System, and the Caribbean Institute for Meteorology and Hydrology on climate adaptation and resilience issues. That's a lot of collaboration. I'll leave the rest of that comment there. So, pillars of action under the U.S. Caribbean Pact 2030. When it comes to improving access to development financing. Now, the DFC that's there, the U.S.'s International Development Financing Corporation, will explore ways to increase access to DFC financing for climate and clean energy projects in, again, that word, underserved Caribbean countries. Given that this is and I'm pausing here away from the statement to just make the comment that given that we are talking about development financing, the differentiation implied in the use of the term underserved Caribbean countries is problematic for me because it suggests that even though the U.S. is engaging with CARICOM as a region, as a group body, the U.S. intends to make some distinction within that body, which I think is a problem. And I hope that does not mean that some of us will get nothing while others of us get everything. I'm concerned about that. So back to the development financing question. Folks, please excuse me for just 1 second.
Love the show? Want to give your support? Become a sponsor today. Call 302-2300 for our rates and packages. That's 302-2300. Become a sponsor on Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. Fresh news, smart talk, all day.
Know how important collecting your money can be to the success of your business. Start your relationship with Fidelity today so that we can show you the many options available to you with our merchant services. From click and pay options online to merchant terminals and e-commerce options. We're here to help your business succeed. For more details, speak to one of our business development officers at 356-7764 in Nassau or 352-6676 in Freeport. Visit our website at fidelitygroup.com or visit any of our branches. We're good for you. Looking for another way to save on your grocery bill? Then look no more.
Sign up for My Solomon Smart Rewards, the ultimate loyalty program, to start earning smart rewards every time you shop Solomon's, Fresh Market, and Xenia Markets. Sign up is completely free in all participating stores and online at amrfoods.com. Loyalty members earn 1 point for every dollar spent, and points can be earned and redeemed in all participating locations. Don't be left out of the savings. Sign up in Nassau, Grand Bahama, or Xenia today and start earning your smart rewards.
It's the most wonderful time of the year. Parents, it's that sweet time of year again. The kids are going back to school, so pick up your copy of the Nassau Times. It's the most wonderful time of the year. Put your students in the latest styles at the lowest prices, because summer break is almost over, and our back-to-school supplement is filled with brand-name back-to-school supplies at discounted prices, store locations, hours, and contact details. It's the happiest season of all. Advertising. Call the Nassau Guardian today at 302-2300 or call your account executive to get in on the 2-for-1 insertion deal. If it's uniforms, shoes, books, backpacks, calculators, art supplies, laptops, tablets, or whatever is on your back-to-school supply list, your ad should be in the Nassau Guardian's back-to-school section. It's the most wonderful time of the year.
This is Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. Fresh news, smart talk, all day.
Welcome back to the Political Review. My name is Quincy Parker. It's my pleasure to be your host on this wonderful Sunday afternoon. And today we are discussing the PAC 2030, the United States and the Caribbean, which seeks to deal with climate assistance and climate resiliency and agreements between the U.S. and the CARICOM to access funding and technical assistance around climate change and climate resiliency. And just before the break, we were looking at the pillars of action that underpin PAC 2030. And the first of them is U.S. development financing. And the International Development Financing Corporation, or DFC, will explore ways to increase access to DFC financing for climate and clean energy projects in underserved Caribbean countries. The point I was making just before the break is the agreement, or the announcement in any event about the agreement, is riddled with that word, that phrase, underserved Caribbean countries. And I've raised the question whether this means that countries like the Bahamas with relatively high GDP will be excluded from any aspects of this agreement. DFC will ensure integrated collaboration under the PAC 2030 Technical Assistance Program by following up on project-specific technical assistance with financing options. DFC will also seek to partner with the World Bank, Inter-American Development Bank, the Caribbean Development Bank, and other multilateral development banks to enhance capital mobilization and expand access to financing. Here is international financing mechanisms. The U.S., under this particular pillar, will advocate for improved access to international financing mechanisms to unlock additional financing for infrastructure projects in Caribbean countries. Again, it says underserved Caribbean countries. The U.S. Department of Treasury will one, explore options to expand the use of multilateral development bank debt deferment clauses to create additional fiscal space to respond to economic shocks. Two, will be open to extending temporary access to World Bank Group resources following extreme events for climate vulnerable Caribbean countries that have graduated from MBD financial assistance programs. That would include the Bahamas, I believe. Three, request that the World Bank improve transparency on the criteria for accessing International Development Association assistance in the event of climate-related disasters. Four, support expanded access to blended financing for Caribbean nations and advocate for robust access to finance for all small island developing states in multilateral environment and climate funds. For example, the Green Climate Fund or the Global Environment Facility. And five, work to extend additional support for Latin American and Caribbean countries through new resources for IDB Invest of meaningful structural, the IMF's Resilience and Sustainability Trust. I wonder what sort of meaningful structural reforms the US is hinting at with that particular statement. The next pillar of the next pillar of action for PAC 2030 under the rubric of improving access to development financing is the Caribbean Development Bank. And here the US, through bilateral grants, technical assistance, and project financing, will expand cooperation with the Caribbean Development Bank and will encourage deeper cooperation between the CDB and the IDB and the World Bank on financing to CDB member states. And to advance this effort, the US will explore, including through consultations with the US Congress, membership in the CDB consistent with US standards for membership in multilateral development banks. It would be a very interesting turn of events. What would that look like? US membership in the CDB. That's a great question, I think, for the US political attaché or the chargé d'affaires to answer. The second pillar of action is facilitating project development and investment. And here we'll have the first sort of sub-pillar under this is PAC 2030 Investment Facilitation Team. And under this here, you'll have the US State Department's Bureau of Energy Resources, which will collaborate with the US Agency for International Development and the US Trade and Development Agency to lead the new PAC 20 investment facilitation team, which will, one, build a pipeline of clean energy and climate projects in the Caribbean by existing funding gaps in renewable energy and energy efficient sectors. Three, explore opportunities to expand power generation from cleaner sources. And four, establish a project facilitation and investment mechanism to leverage greater private sector investment in climate and clean energy projects. Of those four sort of terms of reference for this new investment facilitation team, I think building a pipeline of climate and clean energy projects and exploring opportunities to expand power generation from cleaner sources will be particularly important to the Bahamas. Next, under the pillar of facilitating project development and investment is the PAC 2030 Technical Assistance Program. And this program is going to be very busy, presuming that it's real. The U.S. will collaborate with the Caribbean national and regional authorities and institutions to promote the goals of PAC 2030 and will explore ways to deliver technical support to develop bankable climate and clean energy projects in the Caribbean. Support under this program will prioritize 1, studies and comprehensive analyses to move projects from concept to financing. 2, building Caribbean regulatory and utility capacity to deploy clean energy and operate reliable and resilient power systems. I think that's going to be very important for us. 3, strengthening the use of climate science and analysis for decision making. I know Rihanna and Neely is excited to hear that. 4, developing and implementing climate adaptation strategies for infrastructure development and building codes. 5, implementing climate smart resource management strategies, such as improved watershed management and climate smart agriculture. And 6, accelerating the development of and adoption of climate and disaster resilient approaches in the region's priority economic sectors of agriculture, water, and the blue economy. The next item under the pillar of facilitating project development and investment is the PAC 2030 Roadshow series, under which the United States will host a series of project development roadshows and reverse trade missions in the Caribbean to identify and cultivate new clean energy and climate adaptation projects for priority consideration. And there's the climate trade missions. And here, under this, the U.S. will host targeted reverse trade missions and trainings to present U.S. technologies, solutions, and best practices to key stakeholders to support them in addressing climate and clean energy challenges in the Caribbean. Then there are energy procurement exchanges. The United States will convene energy sector procurement officials for climate and energy resilience focused exchanges and visits to the United States. These activities will support Caribbean countries' efforts to establish procurement practices and policies that integrate life cycle cost analysis and best value determination in a fair and transparent manner. I'm going to leave that one alone too. The next pillar is enhancing local capacity building. Under this pillar, we're talking about global climate data, tools, and information. And the U.S. will work with the Caribbean partners to address region-specific needs for early warning, disaster risk reduction, and climate adaptation, and to provide access to global climate data, tools, and information. To strengthen regional and national partner institutions and fora, the United States will support capacity building to forecast, prepare for, and respond to coastal hazards and extreme weather, water, and climate events, enhance ecosystem resilience, and help develop the next generation of climate-informed decision makers. Oh, okay. So we're going to take a short break here. And when we come back, we'll continue to look at the PAC 2030 pillar for enhancing local capacity building, which the Bahamas will no doubt need to take great advantage of over the course of this agreement. So we'll be right back. You're listening to The Political Review, and I'm Quincy Parker. See you on the other side of the break.
Life is full of complicated things. Trading in the Bahamian stock market doesn't have to be one of them. As a basic registered broker, RF Stock Brokerage is your direct line to buying and selling shares in publicly traded companies like AML, Cable Bahamas, Doctors Hospital, and more. And with priority trading and the automatic deposit of your trade proceeds and dividend payments, with RF, you're going to love the way you trade. Get started today at rfgroup.com. RF, money at work.
What's your flavor? Tell me what you like. I gotta have me some Powerade right now, now. Replenish me, hydrate me, bring power to my game. Oh, so let me have it. I need some Powerade. So tell me what's your flavor? Powerade. I got my game face on, I'm ready. Got my vitamin, electrolytes, got some power.
Hello? Keisha, you something else, boy.
Who this is? Tamika?
You don't even remember my name? Wow, Dread.
Girl, I've been so busy. You still planning your trip?
Girl, and I can't wait. I right here online booking my car.
You dare planning trip? You vaccinated?
Girl, we had to. We ain't been nowhere since this pandemic started. Girl, and we got a 14-day vacation.
Best vacation ever.
Girl, are you though?
Well, I know you was gonna get the vaccine because you too like travel. When y'all get your vaccine?
Girl, long time. Because you gotta get your first dose, wait, then get your second dose at least 2 weeks before you travel. Johnny get his vaccine and he 12. Even Grammy get hers. Child, and Grammy say she ain't get no money. But I see her hiding that under the mattress.
Child, let me see. You Keisha don't play with me.
Vaccinate today, live tomorrow. A message by PAHO WHO, Canada, and US Aid.
Love the show? Want to give your support? Become a sponsor today. Call 302-2300 for our rates and packages. That's 302-2300. Become a sponsor on Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. Fresh news, smart talk, all day.
This is Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. Fresh news, smart talk, all day.
Good afternoon and welcome back to the Political Review. My name is Quincy Parker. I'm your host today, and today we're talking about the recent meeting between the U.S. President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris and the leaders of the Caribbean community. They made some agreements between the U.S. and CARICOM. Among those agreements was specifically the establishment of 3 joint committees on finance, food security, and energy. And also at the summit, Vice President Kamala Harris launched something called the United States Caribbean Partnership to address the climate crisis 2030. That's called, for short, PAC 2030. And we're going through the PAC 2030 agreement, sort of the big ticket items on it, and looking at what it is expected to produce for the Caribbean countries that are partnering with the United States in this initiative. And we've arrived at the pillar of facilitating project development and investment. Well, we looked at that pillar, and now we're on the pillar of enhancing local capacity building. And just before the break, we'd learned that the U.S. would work with Caribbean partners to address region-specific needs for early warning, disaster risk reduction, and climate adaptation, and to provide access to global climate data, tools, and information. Also under local capacity building, the agreement is for the U.S. under user-informed climate data systems. The U.S. agrees to work with the Caribbean partners to make climate information relevant, accessible, and useful for decision makers, both in the public and private sectors, to improve their ability to adapt to climate change risks and enhance resilience. Activities will focus on strengthening and expanding user-informed climate data systems to support climate information sharing and use through improved availability and accessibility, increasing the adoption of adaptation plans and coping mechanisms and strategies, and supporting efficient hazard information systems to improve disaster resilience. Also under capacity building, the agreement refers to the 100,000 strong in the Americas. On the climate and STEM, that's science, technology, engineering, and math, the U.S. will expand this signature public-private partnership to include a focus on the Caribbean, which will aim to build institutional capacity and increase access to innovative, inclusive training and student development programs in climate, green economies, STEM, health, and other areas. I hear the University of the Bahamas loud and clear in that. Building local island-to-island solutions for climate and sustainable development goals. The U.S. will facilitate peer-to-peer networks connecting Caribbean climate experts with those of island jurisdictions in the United States and beyond, providing targeted assistance in response to stakeholder needs to advance best practices in climate applications to advance 2030 sustainable development goals and climate goals. And the last point listed under the capacity building pillar is nature-based solutions to climate change. And under this, the United States plans to support climate change adaptation, mitigation, and resilience by working with Caribbean countries to build capacity for designing and managing effective and expanded marine protected area networks. These activities will focus on nature-based solutions to climate change that protect coastlines, sequester carbon, and result in more resilient habitats, living marine resources, and communities that depend upon them. The last pillar I think that we'll have time to look at today is the pillar of deepening collaboration with Caribbean partners. I just want to say at 5:01, thank you for tuning in to Guardian Talk Radio. You're listening to The Political Review. I'm your host, K. Quincy Parker, and today we're talking about the agreements between the United States and CARICOM, the Caribbean community, that were struck at the most recent Summit of the Americas, during which the US President Joe Biden had his first meeting with the leaders of the Caribbean community as a group. And subsequent to, there was an agreement that was announced. It's the United States Caribbean Partnership on the climate crisis. And it's the short name for it is PAC 2030. And we've been going through the terms and the terms of reference and the pillars of that particular agreement. And we're now at the last pillar of PAC 2030's action plan, which is deepening collaboration with Caribbean partners. Under this, the first thing is U.S. Caribbean leader engagement at the Summit of the Americas. That has come and gone. Next is the Caribbean Clean Energy and Climate Adaptation and Resilience events. Oh, so sorry. Both of those happened at the summit. And again, we'll have to be paying attention in the next months to see what comes of the talk. I remember I remember when I was posted at the Bahamas Embassy in Washington, I went sort of for the first time to the OAS, Organization of American States, to participate in one of the diplomatic committee meetings. And on the ride there, the then ambassador, C.A. Smith, was talking to me about the OAS and what to expect. And one of the things that he said was, you know, the OAS was, quote unquote, a talk shop, which means that they did a lot of talking, and it was difficult to see much action come out of all the talk. Now, it will be. I am holding the same concern about PAC 2030, as are, you know, sort of all of the policy hawks around the region, because frankly speaking, talk is cheap. In a forum like the Summit of the Americas, you know, mouth could say anything, as they say, right? And like CA told me on a different occasion, which I love this, why I keep using it. You know, paper will lay down and let you write anything on it. You know, what's on paper doesn't matter. What matters is what people do. And I just hope that the engagement of the U.S. and Caribbean leaders at the Summit of the Americas and the clean energy and climate adaptation events that were held, which included a transitional energy working group at a Caribbean Sustainable Energy Forum, I hope that they result in improved investment promotion, improved technical and regulatory capacity building and training, that it's more than just a photo op. Also, under the pillar of deepening collaboration with Caribbean partners is a reference to the Caribbean Center for Renewable Energy. And here, the U.S. promises to collaborate with this center to promote the use of sustainable energy in the region through a climate resilient path that supports economic growth and social development. And also, there's the Caribbean Regional Climate Outlook Forum. The U.S. promises to work here with partners, including the Caribbean Institute for Meteorology and Hydrology, to foster joint research, training, and engagement focused on enhancing the Caribbean the Caribbean Regional Climate Outlook Forum, and use of that particular network to reduce climate risks and enhance resilience across the region. And those are the terms of reference for the U.S. Caribbean Partnership on the U.S. Caribbean Partnership on the Climate Crisis. The proper name, the U.S. Caribbean Partnership to Address the Climate Crisis, PAC 2030, announced last month by U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris, and setting up a framework for the U.S. to collaborate with the Caribbean community on important climate crisis matters. Now, I talked about our Prime Minister has adopted a stance in the international arena of seeking to hold the big climate effectors like the United States and other big industrial countries, to hold them to account for not only what they do to affect climate change, but also the responsibility that they have to assist the small island developing countries who are suffering the brunt of the climate change damage that is being done because of the refusal of the larger industrial countries to find ways of development that are not detrimental to climate health. And so it's going to be fascinating to see, as I say, the tone that gets taken by Caribbean leaders in February of next year at the next Heads of the Caribbean Community meeting, which is, as we say, scheduled for February 2023 here in the Bahamas. And I expect or anticipate that the tone of the commentary will be directly proportional or to the amount of action and the quality of action that has been taken on these commitments between now and then. Specifically, we'll be looking for tangible results. And if you ask yourself what results matter the most from an engagement like this, obviously the first is money. We can't get around that. In order to do anything, the first thing that is necessary is the ability to afford it. So it's going to be interesting to see just how much money and under what terms that money flows to the region under these agreements. Next, after money is technical assistance. We are I guess, and I think that also sort of comes to the money thing too, right? I promised. I'm sorry, folks. It may seem like I'm hesitating. It's because I made a commitment to myself not to talk about BPL because I was the director of public relations there. And to an extent, I feel like some of the information that I have about the workings of, but it is a public company, so I'm still wrestling with that. But what is I think what is fair to say is that there's a level of local expertise that often gets overlooked or dismissed at the political level, where you often have exchanges at the government level where you're talking, the leaders of state having discussions, and the thing that is missing in those discussions sometimes is the local level of technical expertise to be able to say, this is what we have in terms of technical capacity, and this is what we need in terms of, technical collaboration. And so I hope that it's not just talk, but that it is talk that is followed by action, and that action is reasonable, well thought out action that actually is targeted properly and has the effect that it is intended to have, and not just throwing money at a problem and hoping it goes away. And so I'll make sure that, I'll make sure to keep us apprised of that particular initiative, the PAC 2030 initiative, as it is unfolding, and also we'll ask when we get the U.S. Embassy folks on the show, we'll try to get some more information on the three joint committees between the U.S. and the CARICOM. Again, one on finance, one on food security, and one on energy security. And I think those will be very important for us to have proper conversations on those things. So, excuse me. So we'll move away from that. And as I say, we'll make sure to keep an eye on those things as they are developing. But I was excited to read something in the press lately, and I wanted to share it with you because I think I just like it. I think it's an important development. If it's possible, Mr. Producer, I need to take a break to pull up to get ready for the next section of the show. So I'm gonna pull a break right here, and we'll be back in just a few seconds.
Love the show? Want to give your support? Become a sponsor today. Call 302-2300 for our rates and packages. That's 302-2300. Become a sponsor on Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. Fresh news, smart talk, all day.
It's the most wonderful time of the year. Parents, it's that sweet time of year again. The kids are going back to school, so pick up your copy of the Nassau Guardian's Back to School Supplement, cause it's the most wonderful time of the year. Put your students in the latest styles at the lowest prices, because summer break is almost over, and our Back to School Supplement is filled with brand name back to school supplies at discounted prices, store locations, hours, and contact details. It's the happiest season of all. Advertisers, call the Nassau Guardian today at 302-2300 or call your account executive to get in on the 2-for-1 insertion deal. If it's uniforms, shoes, books, backpacks, calculators, art supplies, laptops, tablets, or whatever is on your back-to-school supply list, your ad should be in the Nassau Guardian's Back to School Supplement. It's the most wonderful time of the year.
Hello? Keisha, you something else, boy.
Who this is? Tamika?
You ain't even remember my name? Wow, Dread.
Girl, I've been so busy. You still planning your trip?
Girl, and I can't wait. I right here online booking my car.
You dare planning trip. You back.
So where since this pandemic started? Girl, and we got a 14-day vacation.
Best vacation ever.
Girl, are you though?
Well, I know you was gonna get the vaccine because you too like travel. When y'all get your vaccine?
Girl, long time. Because you got to get your first dose, wait, then get your second dose at least 2 weeks before you travel. Johnny get his vaccine and he 12. Even Grammy get hers. Child, and Grammy say she ain't get no money. But I see her hiding that under the mattress.
Child, let me send my list, because I know you going shopping.
Keisha, don't play with me.
Vaccinate today, live tomorrow. A message by PAHO WHO, Canada, and USAID.
Sign your basketball teams up today for the Michael Scooter Reed Peace on the Streets Basketball Classic, August 1st through the 7th at the Hope Center. Get ready for the pastors versus politicians, along with the Phil Lightburn Slam Dunk Contest, then Energy 3-point shootout, along with all championship games, live in living color at the Kendall G. Liza Gymnasium, Sunday, August 7th, beginning at 5 p.m. That's the Michael Scooter Reed Peace on the Street Basketball Classic. For more information, contact 601-484.
When faced with an illness like cancer, we band together, and we at Cleveland Clinic in Florida have your back. From advanced cancer treatments to extra safety measures at all of our locations, we're with you on this journey. For every infusion and follow-up, for every step of the way, for every care in the world. Cleveland Clinic in Florida. Get the care you need when and where you need it. To learn more or connect with a local representative, visit clevelandclinic.org/Caribbean.
This is Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. Fresh news, smart talk, all day.
Good afternoon and welcome back to the Political Review. My name is Quincy Parker. I'm your host. And excited to be with you today. And so listen, this is interesting. Damien Gomez QC has been appointed as the Bahamas' human rights ambassador. And I think that's an interesting and useful appointment. Damien's, among his first actions, was to sort of seek closure for what I think is a bit of a blemish on the Bahamas' human rights record dating back to 2014. Has to do with some the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights requested something called precautionary measures with respect to some three Cuban men who were detained at the Bahamas at the time. And what that means is that the IACHR deemed that these men were at risk because of, they had been in open opposition to the Cuban regime, and that they had been targets of persecution because of that. The fact is, this goes all the way back to 2014. And now, almost 10 years later, the matters are still open, despite the fact that 3 years have passed, which under the IACHR's own rules means the matter should have been struck out. And so when I spoke to Gomez about it and the way this reflects on the Bahamas, he pointed out that it makes it seem like we don't deal with human rights in a timely way, which is not a good thing. And as he pointed out, the real problem is that these matters are old and that there's no explanation as to why the IACHR hasn't done anything to remove these old issues from our record, so to speak. And Damian Gomez's point was that, the Bahamas has a good reputation as an observer of human rights. And so they're going to, over the next few weeks, he's going to work with the Bahamas' permanent mission to the OAS with Ambassador Donovan Nemore. And they're going to work to get these things taken care of, stricken off of our record. But it's really good to point out that the ambassador for human rights is already sort of out there working to assert in the international space. And I think he's going to end up having a lot of work. The Bahamas is a member of the community of nations that takes human rights seriously. And that there is not just one side to any story, particularly when it comes to something like human rights. He met last week in DC. Not by now, it would have been 2 weeks ago, I think. Would have met with the representatives of the OAS's Secretariat for Access to Rights and Equity, where they agreed that the Secretariat will share the portfolio of projects that feature the Bahamas and assist with the development of best practices with respect to human rights and provide technical support to the Bahamas as it seeks to standardize best practices for managing things like irregular migration and the provision of social justice and inclusion. I think that's going to end up being, like I said, that's a lot of work on I think the new ambassador's plate. And he also met with Ambassador Hugh Adsett, who's the Canada's permanent representative and ambassador to the OAS. And the Canadian ambassador agreed on the formulation of Canada's Charter of Rights and Freedoms and an agreement for collaboration with respect to matters of regional concern that may impact the Bahamas, including, again, irregular migration and climate change. And in my conversation with Ambassador Gomez, he pointed out that Canada has a very interesting sort of human rights regime that is province specific almost, and he thought that would be something that would benefit the Bahamas to be familiar with and to be able to study and take advantage of. And then finally, he met with the permanent resident of Guatemala to the OAS, permanent representative, of Guatemala to the OAS. And there they agreed that there's room for collaboration as both parties consider the impact of global change, irregular migration, and human rights violations on the socioeconomic development of the respective countries. And that's kind of an interesting meeting. Guatemala has some perspectives that I think are going to be very interesting and useful as the Bahamas navigates this human rights ambassadorship, and I'm very interested to see what the new ambassador is going to be doing. And I think, I'm planning to have him on the show, maybe not next week, but the week after. So, if you have questions, make sure you get them to me. He's an open guy. He'd be happy to take any questions that we have. And with the last few minutes of the show, I wanted to just point out that something interesting is happening in the cruise industry. The United States Centers for Disease Control and Prevention has dropped its COVID-19 program for cruise ships. That program was initially a set of mandatory measures that cruise lines had to follow in order to continue sailing out of U.S. ports. And the program eventually became mandatory and has now been scrapped entirely. Of course, it remains to be seen whether this means cruise lines will drop pre-cruise testing and vaccination requirements. Every cruise line, including the three major U.S. cruise lines, that's Royal Caribbean, Carnival, and Norwegian, all required all passengers to provide proof of a negative COVID test taken no more than 2 days before their cruise, and all passengers 12 and over must also be vaccinated. So that, a bit of history. The CDC had imposed a ban on the cruising industry from March 2020 through July 2021. Now, of course, that affected the majority of cruise lines as they all, sail out of U.S. ports, no matter what flag they sail under. So once the ban was lifted, the CDC imposed severe restrictions on the industry, limiting capacity on ships, requiring masks, mandating vaccinations for anyone 12 and over, and insisting on pre-cruise testing and monitoring of crew positive tests. These limitations were all put together and enshrined in the COVID-19 program for cruise ships. Eventually, the program became voluntary, and then last week, without fanfare and without really any explanation, the CDC dropped the program entirely. So what that means is that the CDC no longer regulates or tracks COVID-19 on cruise ships. The CDC will continue to publish guidelines to help cruise ships continue to provide a safer and healthier environment for passengers, crew, and communities going forward. But those guidelines will be just that. guidelines. They will not be mandatory as they had been prior to the last few months. So what does that mean? While the absence of the mandate might lead cruisers to expect that vaccine requirements and pre-cruise testing might soon go away, the industry experts that I've been reading on disagree. Indeed, want the easiest, most inclusive rules, but they also want customers to be and feel safe. Royal Caribbean International President and CEO Michael Bailey expected that while pre-cruise testing is likely to go away eventually, it would still be around for another couple of months. Bailey expected that the vaccination requirement for all passengers 12 and over will remain. Vaccines have helped limit the number of severe cases on board, and industry insiders point out that showing vaccination cards is a much smaller ask of passengers than requiring them to get tested no more than 2 days before their cruises. We have, I think this is probably going to be our last break. And when we come back, we'll look at what some of the other cruise industry veterans have to say on the subject. But I find it interesting, and I want to know what our cruise experts in the Ministry of Tourism have to say about this particular issue. A lot of cruise lines fly the Bahamas flag, and so with the dropping of the COVID-19 program for cruise ships, that puts the onus on the cruise ship, and perhaps the flag will also have some things to say. So yeah, we'll take a short break and then to dive into this a little bit more. Thank you.
I used to think of the bank as my personal ATM machine. If I wanted a new car, new furniture, a weekend trip to Miami, no problem, just max out the credit card or top up my loan. I was a big baller until I realized that 75% of my salary was going to pay back all those loans. Fidelity's personal financial coaching was the best solution. Fidelity gave me a plan with a debt consolidation loan that has a built-in savings that pays 5% interest. I now only have one low monthly payment, plus money in my pocket. Give Fidelity Bank a call at 356-7764 in Nassau or 352-6676 in Freeport. Visit any of Fidelity's locations or visit a website at fidelitygroup.com.
Hello? Keisha, you something else, boy.
Who this is? Tamika?
You ain't even remember my name? Wow, Dread.
Girl, I've been so busy. You still planning your trip?
Girl, and I can't wait. I right here online booking my car.
You dare planning trip? You vaccinated?
Girl, we had to. We ain't been nowhere since this pandemic started. Girl, and we got a 14-day vacation.
Best vacation ever.
Girl, are you though?
Well, I know you was gonna get the vaccine because you too like travel.
Fine. Because you got to get your first dose, wait, then get your second dose at least 2 weeks before you travel. Johnny get his vaccine and he 12. Even Grammy get hers. Child, and Grammy say she ain't get no money. But I see her hiding that under the mattress.
Child, let me send my list because I know you going shopping.
Keisha don't play with me.
Vaccinate today, live tomorrow. A message by PAHO WHO, Canada, and USAID.
Sign your basketball teams up today for the Michael Scooter Reed Peace on the Streets Basketball Classic, August 1st through the 7th at the Hope Center. Get ready for the pastors versus politicians, along with the Phil Lightburn Slam Dunk Contest, then Energy 3-point shootout, along with all championship games, live in living color at the Kendall G. Liza Gymnasium, Sunday, August 7th, beginning at 5 p.m. That's the Michael Scooter Reed Peace on the Street Basketball Classic. For more information, contact 601-484.
At Doctors Hospital, our lamp just got brighter. The Loyalty Advantage membership program now has 3 unique plans to choose from. From Lamp Prepaid with free prime care visits and service line discounts, Lamp Insured with copay waivers and 0 upfront collections at the ER and inpatient services, or our new Lamp Access, a free plan that offers 10% off labs, pharmacy, and imaging. Lamp has a plan for everyone. To sign up, visit our website or give us a call. Doctors Hospital, trusted and best care now.
This is Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. Fresh news, smart talk, all day.
Welcome back to the Political Review. And I am your host, Quincy Parker. And I am excited to be with you on this, the 24th of July, 2022. And we're talking about the fact that the United States Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, has dropped its COVID-19 program for cruise ships. Now, once again, that program was a set of mandatory measures that cruise lines had to follow in order to continue sailing out of U.S. ports. Of course, that affected pretty much all of the major cruise lines, which sail out of U.S. ports with different flags. And the program required limited capacity on cruise ships. It required that passengers wear masks. It mandated vaccines for anyone 12 and over, and insisted on pre-cruise testing and monitoring of crew positive results. So that was mandatory, and then it became voluntary I think it was 2 months ago. And then on, what was it, last week, Thursday, the CDC just dropped the program with no statement. It just dropped it. And so while some people sort of expected that means that cruise lines are going to do away with pre-cruise testing, industry experts say no, not right away, and maybe not at all. And right before the break, I quoted Royal Caribbean International's president and CEO, Michael Bailey, who said that he expected that while pre-cruise testing is likely to go away, it wouldn't be for at least another couple of months. Bailey said that he expected vaccination requirements for all passengers ages 12 and over would remain. And he pointed out that vaccines have helped limit the number of severe cases on board. And other industry insiders point out that showing vaccination cards is a much smaller ask of passengers than requiring them to get tested no more than 2 days before they cruise. And so while some destinations may continue to require testing, which would mean no change in policy is likely to be absolute, the CDC's decision does appear to pave the way for the cruise lines to mostly drop the testing requirement. Now, outgoing Carnival Cruise Lines CEO Arnold Donald thought this was a good move. Speaking to Travel Weekly, Donald said, the fact is, we, as in the cruise industry, were being held, and we felt unfairly, to a different standard, a zero-risk standard relative to the rest of the travel and leisure sector and the rest of society. We finally got to a place that brings us much closer to where the rest of society is in terms of freedom to operate responsibly. So, just to be clear, all three of the major US cruise lines, again, that's Carnival, Royal Caribbean, and Norwegian, they still require all passengers to provide proof of a negative COVID test taken no more than 2 days before their cruise, and all passengers 12 and over to be vaccinated. That is still a requirement of the cruise lines, despite the fact that the CDC has dropped its mandate and even dropped the voluntary nature of the program. Now it's really up to the cruise lines what they're going to do. But of course, that's not the end of the story, because the United States government is not the sole authority involved in the decision, because the cruise lines will have to accommodate whatever the rules of the destination are as well. And that's why I think now that the CNs to their own devices, it's got to be made clear by Bahamas authorities for it's the only jurisdiction that I care about. It's got to be made clear by Bahamian cruise authorities what sort of regime is going to be in place. Will the Bahamas continue to require pre-cruise testing? Will the Bahamas continue to require 12 and over to be vaccinated? These questions are especially pertinent given that the Bahamas just changed the COVID testing rules, which means that it's now a possibility that the cruise lines that stop here could change the rules for sailing to the Bahamas, right? The Bahamas Ministry of Tourism released a press statement last week that talked about eliminating the mandatory Bahamas travel health visa, while at the same time announcing that fully vaccinated travelers would no longer be required to submit a pre-travel COVID testing to enter the country. So, sorry, I answered my own question there, right? All unvaccinated travelers aged 2 and older, I think, well, it says 2 and older. I have to check on that to see if that means 12, and it probably means 12 and older, will be required to obtain a negative RT-PCR or a rapid antigen no more than 3 days prior to travel, and present the negative test results at check-in before travel to the Bahamas. So the rules, there's some nuance there. And the rules will, of course, vary by port. But as the Bahamas, continues to be a leader in the cruise industry, it'll be interesting to see how many ports adopt our rule change. But as of the present moment, neither Carnival nor Royal Caribbean or Norwegian have made any major COVID rule changes sailing out of the US. But when they release their August protocols, which should be sometime this week, we'll find out if any changes get made. So it's something to keep an eye on, because it does have an effect on the number of people who are able to sail, able to cruise. And that's important to us, given that cruise passengers make up 75 to 80% of our annual tourist visitors. And that's something that I think we as a country should be keeping a very close eye on. And I think that, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for us today. Thank you for your energy. Thank you for listening. And I look forward to being with you again next week. And stay tuned for the show that's coming up. Should be a good one. I expect it to be a good one. Mr. Producer, thank you very much for your time. You did a great job today. Folks, we'll see you next week. God bless. And thank you. That's it for today here on The Political Review. I'm Kyle Quincy Parker, your host, wishing you a wonderful week. Be strong and of good courage. All right. Bye-bye.